to to build on that, that was one of the things that kept happening on the trip, is that people would tell us, come in, this is a safe community, this is a safe place, and you're welcome here, but be careful about the next community, about the next neighborhood, and or across the state or whatever, the city versus a rural area. And then we would go to that place and they would say the same thing. And it was just, it was kind of overwhelming to have that happen over and over again, and to realize the way in which, we have this, fear of the other that is universal. We all share it. Anyway, so is that something that other people can relate to, or?
When we were considering a move to another state, we did our research by spending weekends in successive parts of the state. And we'd meet with a realtor and go around, and we were trying to figure out what market we felt we could fit into economically. And at each place, the realtor said exactly that. Oh, things are good here, but they're all inbred in that next area, and all up the coast.
Yeah.
It's that same thing. I'm wondering, sometimes I am more open to initiating a conversation with a stranger when I'm with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Did traveling with your husband help with that barrier for you?
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm an introvert, he's an extrovert too. So in addition to the gender issues and just having another person, we also had that. And I relied on him to, keep conversations going and that kind of thing. And I also relied on my bicycle to do that, because it sort of, it was a great icebreaker. The loaded bike was a way in which people had so many questions that that got the conversation going. The other thing that I used that David couldn't use is that I was able to say, I lost my job, and that was a real opener, because even if it wasn't something that people wasn't parallel, they hadn't also lost their job, and lots of people had. It was just any kind of tragedy, any kind of thing that they were working on, that people felt more comfortable telling me because of that. So that sort of became a gift, that I was able to, to use that. What happened is that my hierarchy of fears toppled, and that, I think, so everything that I had, very carefully kind of figured out, and really dysfunctionally figured out, I had all these strange rituals for keeping myself safe that make no sense. I write about, carrying a heavy backpack, which makes no sense whatsoever, right? But maybe makes me feel safer for some reason. But when the hierarchy of fears topples, when there's something else is most important than never was before, for example, trucks, or just having to get off the road, suddenly people are your saving grace, that I would never have talked to before, because I have to get off the road, and I have to get away from that truck, and you have to help me, kind of thing. So and then it kind of makes you question everything, all these things that you didn't even realize that you were constricting your life based on, because if it topples and you're still okay, then it kind of, it really does make you question, what everything that you were kind of ordering. You didn't even know, I didn't even know I was ordering my life that way. I wasn't really conscious of it, but here I was, operating in a very different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was gonna say, Hi, Anne.
Hi.
I met you on the Facebook group.
Right. So nice to meet you.
That's so fun. This book, I don't know. I just felt from okay, I might have got the timing wrong. I'm not quite sure. But interestingly, in the summer of '82, I also was in Central America. Was not an activist.
Uh-huh.
Was at a volunteer for a mission school,
Mhm.
but ended up spending a week at a camp for refugees from Nicaragua who came into Honduras, like in the middle of nowhere. And I was all of, probably 19, maybe, and got to go off of course, before all this digital stuff we have, right? They sent me off with a stack of papers to do census so they could figure out how much food to order for the refugees in the camp. It was a very interesting summer. And so I'm off. They just, just walk down there. You'll see some cabins. Just pick one and sit on the porch and count numbers. I'm like, okay. I just love adventure. I think from a very young age, when I was 18, I rode my bike from Rochester, New York to Bar Harbor, Maine. So these were things, I didn't know any of these people, and I remember sitting in this camp in Honduras, sitting there counting numbers going, there is not one other person in the world that knows where I'm at right now. No one, my parents, my friends, even the people at the camp, well, they could find me eventually, but I thought that was the coolest thing. I just thought, this is so freeing, and wow, this is so cool. Now I feel like I can't hide it all. I wish I could in this day and age. Anyway, from the moment you told me you were down there at that era, and then you went on to tell me all these stories of the people. I just love people and I love stories. And I've always gone through life with every person has a story. Every being is a story. And I could talk all day to just about anybody. It's like, just tell me your story. I wish I knew how to do that. And then when you said not enough notes, I just recently moved, and I've been, of course, carrying those pictures of Honduras from house to house or just stashed in a corner. Right? I haven't looked at them in 30 years or however many. And I started looking through them, looked at every photo, and read my notes and kept thinking, shoot, I wish I had kept in touch with these people. Wish I had written more notes. I guess we never feels like you have enough time, but I just love the fact that you just did talk to these people and you did tell their stories and your history, and being able to put it in issues of today was just, it was beautiful. I just kept saying to my husband, look, you gotta read this little story. Like, this woman, she's with us, she gets it. And life is what you make it. And I just feel like that it just is exciting to me. I wanted to say, what is she going to talk to next? What's the next story going to be? So I was very impressed. I mean, the fact that it took you 10 years, that's fine. I've never written a book. I don't know, but how fun to be able to do what you did. I'm very impressed and think it's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last year, part of my COVID response was to take my first ever bike trip on the Gap and C&O from Pittsburgh to DC, which is something I'd wanted to do for 15 years. But I am continuing to read about everything that I missed along the way. And I missed a lot. I was pushing myself to achieve preconceived goals of, which lodging every night, and really overestimated I made it every day, but I didn't have time to stop and smell the flowers. And I'm kind of wondering what sort of preparation you did in terms of where you were going to stay the next night, how much you knew about the natural history or human history or whatever of the areas you were going through, because you gave a lot of that in your book. Did you study up on all of it ahead of time or read up on it afterwards, or yeah?
Yeah, a lot of it was afterwards. And again, that would be, in the regrets. It would have been even better if I had done it beforehand, or I think the nature, I think what you're talking about is the nature of bicycling. So, I mean, there are, so we miss things because of that, but we also get things because of that. I think, we get lost, or, the time just, or there's a storm or whatever, and our plans get all toppled, and then, you meet somebody that you never would have imagined meeting, and something go down a road that leads to somewhere. I mean, that's what kept happening, and that was sort of amazing. Because things kept going wrong, right? But in other ways, those wrong things, those wrong roads, led to some really great experiences. So, I don't know how much you can plan. I do want to do another trip. I want to do the interstates, and I do want to do more reading beforehand. But in terms of the planning, where we're going to be this day and that day and that day, I know that that's not realistic, right? That's just a sort of setting yourself up for feeling as though you did it all wrong. So
I can say this. I told you I like adventure. So I went on to college, and after Honduras, traveled, met a man in college. We're still married after how many? 37 years. And he is from Africa. And so that was huge. In some ways for some people, but for me, it was just another adventure. Where's this one going to lead, And it has led us many places, to many people, in many situations. I was this little country girl from central Michigan, grew up on the farm, went to college, then started traveling. Then one day my husband said, we were in a city, he said to me, we need to move back home. And I was like, with 2 kids, and I'm thinking, what is he talking about? There is no way in the God's earth I'm going back to that farm with my 2 little children in this all-white community that has a racist history, period. I'm not doing that. He's got to be crazy. So my response, and we're face to face, I said, you must mean Nigeria, because we can't move back to Fowlerville. We can't do that, because my history there was no way we could live there. He was, because he's African, and because the family and living with family is so important and so treasured, that was his only thinking. He couldn't even think about the fact that, oh, people are racist that bad that you'd consider not living in your hometown. So there we were. For the next 20 years we spent on the farm, so the kids got to know their grandparents, their aunt and uncle. We were accused of changing the face of the community. Okay, not a bad thing, but it was hard. It was hard, I feel like, for me. We've since left there now, just as of 2-3 years ago, and on our next journey in life. So I don't know where we're going, don't know what's next really, but we've sold the farm, we're away from the farm, the parents are gone, my brother still lives there, but you know what? I'm not dying to go back there. I will go anywhere else. But I always thought the only reason I could go back at that point in my life was because I had traveled, because I had seen other places and talked to many different people, that I knew that family is important. He was probably right. They need to know their grandparents, that kind of thing. So I sometimes wish I could just be that person, like my dad, who lived in 3 houses within a half a mile on the same road since he was 12 to age 85. I can't do that, but he could. And I envy people who can, and they're content. So I don't know. That's me.
I always wanted a vacation cottage somewhere, but I could never decide which single place to devote myself to and every summer to. And then I grew up on the East Coast, moved to Oklahoma for a couple of years, felt like there was not a tree in sight, and it drove me nuts. We had friends from Oklahoma come visit us after we moved to Massachusetts. They felt hemmed in by all the trees.
Mm.
That to me was very instructive.
Yeah.
I discovered living in a small town in Maine, there were, I think, 4 Black children who had been adopted from Louisiana or Mississippi or something. So it was very, very white. But one thing that interested me was that I had spent 6 or 8 years in the South. I'd been all over the place. Every socioeconomic issue, level of society, conflict, whatever, they were all there.
Mm.
They were all white and they had all the same stuff as in more diverse communities,
Mhm.
which I just found fascinating. Tells me more that, it's about people and about that otherness we were talking about earlier than it is about some of these visual cues we have for each other.
Mhm. I actually was most interested in the places that were the hardest, that were, Western Florida and Texas. Where I was constantly learning, where I was constantly off guard. It's not that it didn't get exhausting, and there weren't moments where I didn't want that, but that's where I felt really, really, really grateful to be able to have the experience that I was having. So, and I got less and less interested in being, in being a tourist and being somewhere pretty and comfortable. Because I felt this kind of urge, this need to understand things, and I wanted to be someplace where that would, where I would be confronted. So
That's one reason I want to do more bike tripping, because you're not a tourist.
yeah.
Amy, we need to go back and do the Gap C&O together. My daughter made me do it in 7 days.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I didn't get to enjoy it.
Uh-uh.
I would love to go back and enjoy it.
You're on.
Yes.
Yeah, well, like I said, I told them I lost my job. That helped a lot. I had the bicycle. And I said that I really wanted their story. Yeah, which was a good way of, but also I think there are ways. I wasn't always successful at this at all, but of the isms, when people are racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever, that you can still have those be lines that you absolutely refuse to cross, and that you're not accepting that. But I still know you're a human, and I still know that that you have that you're hurting for a lot of reasons, and that you have a story. So I go into it with those principles. I'm not always successful, but at the same, that I want to do both of those things. Does that make sense?